Hey, welcome back to the Next.js 14 series. In the last video, we dove into the basics of routing, nested routes, dynamic routes, and even learned how to group routes using folders for cleaner, more modular code. But today, we're going to shift gears and talk about something really important, client and server components. This is a game changer for optimizing how your app behaves, performs, and interacts with the user. In this video, we'll break down what these components are, how they work together, and how to decide which one to use based on your needs. So let's jump right in. First of all, let's talk about a generic React application or a Vite application. By default, when you create a Vite app, all the components are rendered on the client side. What does this mean? It means when a user visits your site, the server sends an initial HTML file, and then the JavaScript for your entire application is loaded and executed on the client's browser. The browser is responsible for rendering the components, handling state, fetching data, and even interacting with the APIs. But when your app gets larger or more complex, there are a few drawbacks to this approach. First, performance issues. Second, SEO limitations. And lastly, overhead or bloating. That's where server-side rendering or SSR and the split between client and server components come to play in Next.js 14. Server-side rendering is a technique where the content of your pages is rendered on the server before being sent to the client's browser. Instead of just sending a blank HTML shell and JavaScript, the server generates the HTML for the page with the content already filled in. So why is server-side rendering better than client-side rendering in many cases? First of all, obviously, faster initial load. Because the HTML is already rendered on the server, users see the content faster. Second, better SEO. Since the HTML is fully generated on the server, search engine crawlers can more easily index the content of the page. Next, reduce JavaScript overhead or bloating. With server-side rendering, the client's browser doesn't need to do all the heavy lifting of rendering the page. And lastly, fewer dependencies on the client. By handling the initial rendering on the server, your app is less reliant on the client's hardware and network speed. In Next 14, SSR is baked right into the framework and is default to every page that is being rendered. By using server components, Next allows you to handle data fetching, rendering, and sending HTML all on the server before the page is loaded in the browser. So, as we already discussed, by default, all the routes in Next.js are server-side rendered. Let's say it via an example. Remember we made a components folder, right? Inside it, let's make a component called client.tsx. Now inside it, first let's write some code. So you're going to export a function named client component, like this is the component basically, and inside it we're going to return hi there. But before returning, we're just going to log this is a client component. We'll check that out later. Now we can just import it in our main route. So for example, let's go to the page.tsx and import it over there. Now in the page.tsx, before we actually return, we're going to log this is a server component. Let's actually hit the endpoint and open the console. Okay, in the browser, I don't see anything. But let's check the VS console. Look, are the logs over here on the server. That means until we explicitly say that yo, render this component as a client one, it will render all the pages as a server component. So to fix this, what we can do is just have use client, this derivative, initialized at the top of the page. Now let's save it and try again. Now in the browser console, we have the log for client component, and in the VS terminal, we have the log for the server component. But why should we even use client components if server is better? Let's open the page.tsx and write a simple counter function. So we're using useState to manage the state of the counter, and the button will trigger the counter. Let's save it and try to visualize what happens. Wait, we have an error in the page.tsx. Well, the problem is that we are using useState here. useState is a React hook, right, that only works on the client side. To fix it, we can just cut this component from here and paste it inside the client component we made. We'll just re-import it and let's see what happens. See? It's working. I'll just click the button and the counter goes up. This is why we use client components. Now, here's one thing to remember. Let's say we make a new file server.tsx and we write some code like this. Point to be noted, we're not marking it as a client component. So if we import it somewhere, it will be rendered as a server component, because it is the default behavior. But there is a limitation. We cannot import a server component inside a client component, but we could do the other way around. So we cannot have server.tsx imported inside the client.tsx. But we could have imported client.tsx into a server.tsx. Also inside the page.tsx, as this is rendered as a server component, we can import both of the files. Alright, that's a wrap for this video. We covered the basics of client and server components in Next.js 14 and why you'd be choosing one over the other. Now, what's next? In the upcoming video, we're going to dive into data fetching, whether it's getting data from an API or your database or any external source, Next.js makes data fetching both simple and powerful. Until then, don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you found this video helpful. And as always, feel free to drop any question or suggestion in the comments. But before I finish up, I want to let you in on something exciting. If you're enjoying the content and want to support me, you can join my Patreon at patreon.com/itsdrvgo. As a subscriber, you'll get early access to all my videos a day or two before they go public on YouTube. Plus, you'll be able to see exclusive behind the scenes, get sneak peeks of upcoming projects and much more. It's a great way to stay ahead of the curve and get involved in shaping future content. Also, if you have any questions or need help with anything we covered, don't hesitate to join our Discord server. I'm active there and it's the best place to connect with me and the community. You'll find the link in the description below. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one. Peace.